Good morning, my friends. It is sourdough bread making day. So I will be making what's called a sourdough boule, which is really nothing but a rounded bread. So what I wanted to explain at first, these videos will be done in two-part versions. One, the preparation day, then the baking day for both this bread and for English muffins. Sourdough bread takes time. So I am going to be taking the time with you as much step by step. Now, you'll see that this sourdough is floating to the top. Whenever you make your bread, you always want to make sure that your sourdough starter is at its peak point. So I had already prepared the leaven the night before, and the leaven ingredients to this bread, and I will put this in the description below, is 50 grams of your sourdough starter. You will need 40 grams of whole wheat flour, 40 grams of bread flour unbleached, and 80 grams of 75-degree warm water. You will mix all that, leave it on your counter overnight, and you will get your levain. So we're going to go ahead and start this because I'm almost getting too late to get this done, and I need to do it while it was at its peak point. So I am going to get started on this, and we'll be right back. I will prepare this section out for you. I'm going to do my best. For those who don't have a kitchen scale, I will be honest with you, to have a kitchen scale is a whole lot better when making any sourdough breads because everything is done by grams. It is very much more accurate, but as I'm going along, I will do my best to give you the cup versions. So let me get this section prepared for you and we will begin. Okay, we have our water, which I just heated. I am using distilled water, just like I've been doing to feed my sourdough. And it is reading at 82, so I need to heat it just a tad bit more. Okay. It doesn't take long, so keep an eye on this. We're at 85 degrees. So I am going to take my bowl, and I am using one with a cover on it. So I am going to be adding, this turned out to be 1.5 cups of water. Now I am taking this recipe, it is a tartine sourdough recipe, and I am cutting this in half to make 1 loaf instead of 2. So now I'm going to take and wipe out my measuring cup because I'm going to be adding my leaven sourdough starter to this, and I'm going to be using 100 grams of my leaven. Push this over so you can see what I'm doing here. Get this out of the way. All right, so I'm going to take my measuring cup, put it on my scale. I'm going to tear it clear, or make it clear, and I'm going to be adding 100 grams. I will try to let you know how much this is of my sourdough levain. I've got way too much, so now I'm going to take this out because you want to be as accurate as possible. And mine is a thick base. Almost there. This part can be kind of tricky, but I want the accuracy, so. And we have 100 grams. Clear it out, and I'm going to add this to my water. Now 100 grams comes out to almost a half a cup. So I'm going to get as much of my starter out of here because I'm going to need every bit of this. All right, set this aside. And now I'm going to take and mix this up really good right now into my water base. Kind of get it dissolved in here. Now you're going to need something to proof this with. If you're fortunate to have an oven that has a light, that will be perfect enough. You need it about an 85-degree temp. I don't have that opportunity, so I'm actually having to makeshift one. I'm using a grow mat set at 85 degrees and a black towel over it, kind of freeform a proofing box because it is kind of cool in here to just leave it out. So all right, our next step from here, we are going to be using 450 grams of unbleached bread flour. Get this out of the way now. Do not discard this because you can use this levain if you have enough left over for something else and make up another batch of it. You can use it for discard as well, to making pancakes or whatever out of it, so you never really want to just get rid of it. So now I need 450 grams of unbleached bread flour. So I'm going to clear this out. This turned right, there we go. All right, now, okay. So now I'm going to take my unbleached bread flour and I'm going to weigh out 450 grams of this. I probably should be writing these down for you to convert it in the description. If I had to guess, this is going to be about 4 cups. And there we have it. And it comes out to be about about 3 cups of the bread flour. Let me write this down for y'all as well. So that was 1.5 cups of water. 1/2 cup sourdough, 3 cups of your bread flour. We're going to pour that in here in our bowl. Reweigh this again. And we need now 50 grams of whole wheat flour. Now this videos will be quite long. I apologize for that, but to be able to get the accuracy, I'm going to have to. Tad bit too much. And then there's our 50 grams. And that comes out to be, again, about 1/2 cup. Yeah, that's about 1/2 cup right there. So we're going to clear this out and we're going to add this to our mix. I'll write that down for you as well. Now, what we're going to do with this flour mix is we're going to mix it up until it makes a rather shaggy dough. You want to incorporate all the liquid into your flour mix. Get this out of your way. So I want to make sure I get all my sides. I want to incorporate this well into my liquid mix until I make a shaggy dough. Now I'm going to start this out with this mixer, and then the rest I'm just going to do by hand. It will get sticky, I will let you know that. So, and at this point is where I'm going to take and incorporate it with my hands. Get all my bits off of the coils. And now I'm just going to mix this in really good. I want to make sure I get everything I possibly can from here. Mix it in really good. You're forming the glutens at this point. And this is going to rest for a bit. Yeah, it does get sticky, so be prepared to get your hands dirty when you make this. Which means it's telling me that it's hydrating quite well. Now I've got all of my flour incorporated in here. I'm going to take off as much dough as I have in my hands. It isn't good bread making unless you can get your hands in there. So I'm going to be right back. I'm going to go ahead and wash my hands off, and then I'm going to form it with a pastry scraper, and I'm going to form this into a ball, and I'll let you know what to do next. Okay, so I do have a plastic scraper, but it seemed to went on vacation on me, so I am actually going to use this hard covered spatula. But all I'm going to do right now is just form this into a ball in the center of my bowl. And I am going to cover this bowl up, and I am going to put it in my proofer for 25 minutes. Now at this point, you want to be prepared to spend at least hour and 25 minutes, hour and a half, up to 2 hours. I'm going to put this in the proofer, and I will come back to explain our next processes, and then I will visually show you what we're going to do next. Okay, so now my bread is in the proofer. I'm going to set my timer for 25 minutes. And when this goes off, we'll be doing the next steps. Now, the next steps will take about 5 times of doing this at 25-minute intervals. And what we're going to be doing basically is stretch and folding our dough. It's going to form our gluten that we need. It's going to fold. It's going to produce the air and the bubbles that we need, so that we can get that nice crumb. When you cut your bread, you get all those little holes, nooks, and crannies inside of it. This is a process that does that. So as soon as my timer comes out, we will start and begin the stretch and pull or stretch and folds on the very first one out of 5 times. And we shall be back. Okay, so I need to correct this. At this point, I need to let it rest at the same temperature. We're not going to be doing the stretch and pulls. We're actually going to be letting this rest for about 20 to 40 minutes. It's called the auto-lease phase of this. It means it's resting right now, and it's going to get slightly rising. But then we still need to add more of our hydration. So at that next step, once I let this rest for approximately 20 to 25 minutes, maybe 40 minutes, depending on how long it takes, I will be adding water and salt to this and mixing that in. And that, at that point, we will mix this into the dough. We will put it in the covered bowl and then fold it every 25 minutes, 5 times. So the next step is, this is the auto-lease phase. We will be adding water and salt to it for our flavoring as well, and adding more hydration. So I still have to wait on this, and we will be back. Again, I will be using distilled water and Himalayan sea salt. Okay, so for our next step, adding the hydration, we're going to need 50 grams of 85-degree water, which is actually, or 25 grams, excuse me, 25 grams of the water, which is about 1/8 of a cup, and 10 grams of salt, which is 1.5 teaspoons approximately. So we're going to take this and mix it together. And it's been about a half hour for my auto-leasing on my bread. So it's building up hydration at this point as well. So I'm going to dissolve this salt in here. We don't add this prior to our auto-leasing because it can mess up with the hydration. The salt will have a tendency to stop that. So we add this part in the end of it. I'm going to get this as dissolved as I can. Okay, now I'm going to go get my bread mix off my homemade proofer. And it's looking like this is working because this has spread more and rise some. So at this point, we're just going to take this mix and we're going to pour it over the top of our bread. And again, it will get sticky, but all we're going to do basically is just pull it like so. Let's see if you can see this. We're going to pull it like so and then just fold it in until we absorb this water into our dough. As much as we can possibly do that. It will still be moist, and this will absorb as time goes on. We're just kind of, and you will have some water at the bottom of your bowl a bit. When we do our stretch and pulls, this will help absorb all that as well. So I'm just going to form this back into a ball. Best I can here. Okay. And we're going to just try to form this into a ball the best that we can. I'm folding it into each other. And that's pretty good right there. So now, this is the type where we're going to be forming our gluten in this. So I'm going to cover it back up again. I am going to stick this in my makeshift proofer for 25 minutes, and then we will do our stretch and pulls. And now that part is done. I'm going to set my timer for 25 minutes again. And we will be back for the very first stretch and pull. Okay, so our first 25 minutes on our stretch and pull is done. And this is our first time. So what we're going to do, I'm hoping one day to get the chef's box that are a little bit clearer to see. So I'm going to try to do this the best I can. In 8 corners and basically all the way around this round, we're going to pick up a corner. Now it's not going to stretch too much in the first, but we're going to stretch it over and pull it towards the center. And we're going to keep doing this 8 times around, just stretching this and pulling it into the center. Stretching this and pulling it into the center. Keeping it in the formation of a ball. 5, 6, 7, 8. Now I had my fingers kind of wet to do this. You're going to find that over time this is going to get smooth, and that's when the glutens are being formed. This is creating the bubbles that happen in your bread. So we're just going to put this back in here, cover it again, put it in our proofer for another 25 minutes. And I will be right back with you. Okay, as I was saying, that is helping that when you cut your bread open, you see all those air pockets in your bread. This is the stages that create that. It's forming bubbles as we stretch and pull. Now, at this time, I'm going to take a few minutes to describe some of the equipment if you want to get into sourdough making. That is really good to have. And I'm going to start with this Dutch pot. This is an enamel Dutch pot. These work really good for artisan breads, even sourdough breads. And what I end up doing is I'll put parchment paper inside of here. They're fairly, at one time, inexpensive. I think I got this one at Walmart for about $40. So, and then the cast iron enamel, they help keep it performs moisture inside of this. Now these will get started out at a very high heat, so these are absolutely perfect to have for sourdough breads or even artesian breads. So this is what we will be using. The next thing that I like to have, and you can get this on Amazon, these are called proofing bowls. They have nice swirls, and they have the round ones, which we will be using. That is for the what's called the boule. And then we have ones that are oval shaped. And they come with these covers, elastic band covers inside of the cloth. If you do not have these, that's not saying that you still can't make this bread. You can find a bowl approximately about this size here. I'm thinking this is about 8 or 9 inch bowl. And you can go again at Walmart and get these flour sackcloths. This will work well in a bowl to be able to do this as well, because this will be going into the refrigerator, and that's where the final rise comes. So I thought I'd show you some of these products that I use to make my sourdough breads. And these will be floured on the inside of them. They will get floured. Many of them use rice flour. They say that's the best, but I'm actually going to be using whole wheat. I do watch tendency, you can use bread flour as well. It's a lot smoother and finer. Whole wheat bread can tendency to have particles that can cut your bread, and I don't particularly like doing that either. But I found that the whole wheat doesn't stick as much as the bread flour. You would have to really coat this really well otherwise. And I try not to use that much flour on it, but you will have flour when you go to put it in your pot. So just so you know that. It just helps to keep it from sticking to the cloth. So I'm hoping this is helping you. Again, these can be found on Amazon. They're called Banneton bowls. And if you can't do this, then you can go and get the flour sackcloths at Walmart and the Dutch pot as well. Now, I have used the cast iron Dutch pot, but I will say that it created darker loaves than the cast iron enamel one. I prefer that one a lot better. Although we are going to get these dark. The darker the better, but not so much burnt. In time, I will show you that part in the second part 2 video. But right now, I am going to go ahead. When I come back this time, it will be on my 3rd stretch and pull. And at that time, I'm going to show you what the next steps for 4 and 5 are. In the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and finish off my farm work and get some of my chores done. And I will see you approximately about the 3rd stretch and pull. And I will show you at this point, when that happens too, this bread should start to be forming a lot larger. It should be rising a lot better, even though we're stretch and pulling it. So this is actually in our rise point at the same time that we're forming our air bubbles within the bread. So I will be back about the 3rd stretch and pull. Just to be able to show you a brief contraption I made, I have and I'm going to try not to disturb this too much, but I have a grow mat under here with a cloth underneath that. I have my timer set. Let's see if I can get this focused in. I have my grow mat thermometer on here, and then I covered it with a black towel, forming a proofing box to the best of my ability in a cool house. I'm actually going to see how much this works. So far, so good. The temperature gauge thermostat is inside here with the bowl, so it gives me an idea of what that temperature behind this towel or underneath this towel is. I know it's a countrified way of making one, but I don't have a light in my oven, and my dehydrator does have a proofing box in it. However, its temp is set for 105. That's a bit too much for this. So I had to create something ingenious way to be able to do this. And you're welcome to laugh about it, because kind of sort of I am too. But that's the only type of proofing box per se that I have. So again, I will be back about the third stretch and pull. Okay, we are at our third stretch and pull. So I'm going to take, just like the other two and the first one I showed you, as you see it's starting to stretch a lot more. So I'm going to stretch and pull this 8 times. 2, gently. You don't want to pull it too hard. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Now, at this point, we're going to be doing more gentler stretches. So I am going to take my ball, gather it up, ooh, Lord, and turn it upside down and tuck inside. Let's see if I can show you this. I'm going to take and just tuck my edges, and it's sticky, underneath this round to make it a round ball. So I'm going to do this all the way around it. Just tuck it in a little bit. Let me get my fingers wet. Getting your fingers slightly wet will keep you from sticking so much to the dough. Now I'm just going to take and tuck this under all the way around after flipping it. Now I'm going to cover this back up and put it in my proofer for another 25 minutes. I can get my lid on here. And it is starting to expand, and it is starting to rise. So we will be back very shortly, because I had noticed something and I want to bring it to your attention as well. Learning from my mistakes. Now at this point, I am going to hope and pray that I did not make my bread dense. And I'm going to catch this before it happens to you. I got to thinking about this. When I prepared for this bread, the beginning of it in my levain, I had it set up for this recipe. Now this recipe originally started out with 2 loaves of bread. I adjusted everything except for the levain. So I will be putting in the description box the original recipe in case you want to make 2 loaves. In the parentheses on the side, I am going to be adding the adjustment for 1 loaf. Here's my mistake. When I made my levain, I set it up without breaking it in half for 1 loaf, like I am making this for. So my levain basically was set for a 2 loaf and then adjusted at the same time for 1 loaf. That would mean that my levain had too much ingredients. So I am at this point, for me, on my mistake, I will find out in the final how this turned out, but I am going to keep you from making this mistake by realizing this. So again, I will be putting in the description box the original, and then in parentheses the half marks to what you should be using to make this bread, whether 2 loaves or 1 loaf. So I thought I would bring that up when I was bringing up the ingredients for this. And like I said, I'm hoping this works for me. If not, lesson learned. I am going to emphasize on a kitchen scale. I am finding, as I'm breaking these down for y'all, the measuring this out by cups is very inconsistent. The most consistent thing to do is use a kitchen scale. You can find these on Amazon. Honestly, some of them are fairly inexpensive. And a lot of the dishes we do for low carb also, I use a kitchen scale. It makes more sense, and I'm honestly seeing this. So doing this by cups, you're not going to get the right amounts that you need for the right hydration or anything else as far as that matters within this bread. So I am going to emphasize on please, and I will be putting that in the description box as well in asterisks. If you're going to do this, or basically any sourdough, now you may find recipes that will do it by cups and everything, but you may find that honestly you are going to get different results. And I am finding that zones or areas, higher elevations, lower elevations, more humidity, less humidity, that also affects into sourdough bread making. So you may end up, if you do them by the cups, I've had them where sometimes I've had really good loaves and other times they were extremely dense. So it all depends. And I have made this bread before, and I don't know what made me make my mistake. I wasn't concentrating too well. And what I'm hoping for at this point, that my bread doesn't become too dense, because I have more flour and water than I needed for this recipe. But anyways, I have followed this recipe before using the scale method, and it was absolutely beautiful. So I am going to emphasize using a scale. Now I have approximately 8 more minutes to go before my bread is ready to fold again, stretch and fold, only we're going to be doing it differently for these next 2 intervals. So, and I will show that to you when this timer is over. Okay, with my fingers lightly damped, and this time, this is called the gentle folding or stretching and folding. So what we're going to do is go inside, lift this up, just like so, where it's pulled, and lay it on top of each other. And we're going to do this 4 times. I'm going to get a bowl with water to dip my fingers. That was 1 time. And we're going to keep doing this 3 more times. So we're going to bring it in, pull it out like so, lay it inside on top of each other. It's kind of like folding it into a loaf. Again, bring it up. And you don't want to do this to make a tear in it. So, and if you see air bubbles coming up, you can just pop those air bubbles. And then 1 more time. Bring it up, gently fold it, and place it on top of each other. Tuck the last end in. And it should look elongated like this. So now I'm going to take and cover it up. And we got 1 more to do. Put this in here. 1 more time to do it. This will be our 5th and final. If you find that your bread is not rising at this point, like mine is, you can go ahead and do that an extra time. So this lid don't want to fit on here right. So I'm going to seal this up. And I'm going to put it in my warmer again and hit it for 25 minutes. When that time comes around, we will be back. Okay, this is our 5th and final time for our stretch and fold. What I'm going to do, I'm going to see if I can do that on this. I've got a silicone mat so I can show you what this looks like. I'm going to dampen it a bit because I'm afraid it's going to stick while I'm trying to show this to you. And the final one will actually be going back into this bowl. So, getting my fingers wet. I'm going to pull this out. Set this aside for a minute. Tucking my hands underneath, like so. And I'm just going to lay it on top. And that's exactly how we're doing it inside the bowl. Again, I'm going to pull in my sides. I'm going to take it, lift up, droop it down, and lay it on top of each other. We're doing this 4 times along the way, popping the air bubbles if you see any. One more time here. Again, drooping it, folding it on top. And now my final one, I'm actually going to go ahead and put it back in my bowl. We're going to tuck our fingers under it, stretch it, and fold it on top of each other. So now I'm going to go ahead and tuck the end in a little bit, making a little loaf form, checking for my air bubbles, popping them. And now I'm going to cover this, and we are going to let this rest for 10 minutes. After the 10 minutes comes up, we'll go ahead and start shaping. We have about 3 more steps to this, and then it will go in for its rise time. So after I let this rest for 10 minutes, we will be back. Okay, our 10 minutes is up, and this becomes practice makes perfect situation. It will take a little bit. Sometimes I have my good days, sometimes I have my bad. I just kind of want to lightly dust at this point, this board, because we're in the shaping stages. So I just want to do a light dusting, because I am going to be pushing some of this back. So I'm going to take our dough out of our bowl, and we are actually done with this bowl now. So now I'm going to pull it out of here and turn it smooth side down. So that I can get it floured. Now, at this point, if you were doing the double loaf, this is where you would cut it in half. But since we're doing a single loaf, I'm just going to leave it like this. So I turned it upside down to get my top floured. Now I also need to turn it back over, because I am going to actually start rolling my dough in and shaping it. So I'm going to take this excess flour away so that I could tuck and pull. And this is where the scraper comes into it. Makes it a little bit easier for shaping. So we are going to, and I'm going to flour this just a bit. We're actually going to take and tuck in as we're turning. So you're going to angle your pan or your scraper down, and you're going to tuck in like you're folding it and pull it out. And you're going to do that, making it taut. You want to keep it kind of tight, because this next step, we're going to just let it rest here. If it's too loose, it's going to sprawl out too much. So we need to tighten this up, but you don't want to tighten it too tight where you're going to cause tears. And you'll see the tears. It'll look like it'll separate the dough. You want to avoid the tears. So we're just going to tuck and pull till we form a nice round, just like so. Forming our bread into a round. And we're tucking and sealing that edge at the same time. And that's it. Just like that. A nice little round. Now at this point, we're going to let this rest for about 20 to 30 minutes. Now this will come down a little bit. It will be, it will spread just some. That's expected, but you don't want it completely flat. So you want to make sure that you're pulling this taut to make it into a nice roll so it'll hold its form to the best it can. Okay, so now mine is pulled in, it's folded, and now I'm going to cover it with my tea towel for 20 to 30 minutes. Now the next step after this, I'm going to go ahead and set mine for 25 minutes. See what it'll look like, and if I have to, I'll add another 5. And I'm going to go ahead and set it. The next step will be shaping our bread, and we will be putting it in our banneton. At that point, it will be going in the refrigerator, and I will explain all this coming up. This video is about to end on this process. Again, I did state it was going to be a long one, but to make a really nice sourdough, it takes steps. Sourdough is one of those breads that definitely takes time. It's an all day, sometimes even an all night process. So the next step, I will show you where we're going from here, and we will finish this video. Almost forgot something. To keep it from sticking while it's resting, just lightly dust the top of your bread to keep it from sticking from your cloth. And now I will be back. Okay, so it's been 25 minutes, and as you see, it flattened some, but it still kept its nice round. So now we're going to shape it. At this point, we're going to take our bench scraper, pull it out from the top. I'm going to flip it over on a lightly floured surface again. Very gently placing this on top. Now I'm going to take this, get some of this flour on me. And I'm using bread flour, by the way. Not a whole lot of it. You don't want to put any more than you have to. Now there will be some in that banneton, so now what we're going to do is take our bread and kind of shape it into a rectangle shape. Just like so. And we're going to shape this into a loaf. So now we're going to take our bottom end, almost like folding up an envelope, pulling it and putting it right smack in the middle, just like so. And we're going to take our two edges like this, fold over, bring it in, fold over, bring it in, meeting in the middle. We have these two corners on each end here. So we're going to take this and pull it up and draw it completely over our round, tucking that bottom in. Then we'll roll it over. And now we're going to take this, and again, we're going to take our bench scraper and form this into a ball, tucking as we go along, sealing our edges, just like so. Making sure not to tear it as you're going along. pretty good. Now, this is where I'm going to take, and you can use what flour you have, rice flour, whole wheat, bread flour, whatever you have. Now I'm going to take and dust the inside of my banneton really good, because this is now going to go in the refrigerator, and I don't need it sticking to my cloth. So I'm just going to go around here, taking out the sharp edges as I do this as well, so it doesn't puncture my bread. Okay. Because some of that wheat is still in my flour, and I don't need that on top of it. So now that's lightly dusted. I'm just going to take, what did I get on my bread? Now I'm going to just take and lightly dust my loaf, just like so. And I'm going to pull it up from the bottom, gently as I can. And I'm going to take the top and put it inside my banneton, just like so. You want to make sure that your bottom edges are sealed. If they're not, just pinch them closed. Just like so. And if you have a bread bag, you can take this whole thing and put it inside of a bread bag. I don't, so I am going to take a piece of saran wrap very lightly over the top. I'm just going to lightly put this over the top of this so it has room to expand should it rise as well. Well, saran wrap can be so tricky. I need to actually get some bread bags for this. I'm going to put one more piece on the top. I want to make sure that this is covered. So it's just lightly pressed on the top. And we will set this in the refrigerator for 4 to 12 or 3 to 12 hours. I will be back to explain the rest of this process. Okay, it is now 2:11 my time in the afternoon. I am going to actually leave my bread in the refrigerator for about 4 hours. Now, you don't want to really leave this in more than 12 hours. This is not only just a partial rise, but this is also the fermenting stage. The longer you leave it in the refrigerator, the more sour it can get. So just know that. About 4 hours leaves a nice, somewhat mellow taste to your sourdough. It's not too weak, but it's kind of nice and pleasant. Now that is preference totally up to you. I will be ending this side of this video, and at about 6:11 tonight, I will be able to do part 2 to this video, and that will be the cooking process of it and what needs to be done then. As far as the English muffins, I'm trying to time this. My husband has an appointment for his wrist tomorrow afternoon, so I may go ahead and do my sourdough at that point that evening and be able to do the English muffins the very next early morning. So I'm going to see how this works. I was going to try to do it tonight, but it'll be too late by the time I get this bread done too. So I may just go ahead and do it that way. I will suggest either one of these two, whether it be this bread or the English muffins. Start your leaven the night before. Let it sit on your counter overnight, and first thing early in the morning, start your sourdough, because as you see, this takes some time. And then by that evening, you should be able to have your bread. So, and the same thing with the English muffins. Start your sourdough, feeding it the night before, and first thing in the morning, you should be able to start working with it as well. So, until this evening, and for part 2, much love to you from Parton's Heritage Homestead.